This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
A national Pharmacare plan. For a lot of people, it's politics. We were talking about this on our episode just yesterday. If you happen to catch that really good conversation with Euan, Thomson, and Anthony Furey, talking about supervised consumption sites, safer supply, stuff that you go, well, wait, hang on a second, what does that have to do with national Pharmacare? But the co-hosts of the discourse, Erica Baruti's and Cheryl Oates, that fantastic political podcast, joined us after that conversation. We started talking about access to drugs, safe supply, resources, health resources for people who use drugs. Then, of course, we transitioned that into talking about the politics around a national Pharmacare plan. And we found some common threads in some of these conversations. And one of those threads, which seems to be a thread that weaves itself through many, if not most, of the conversations we have on this show, is that it's an issue, it's a thing, a national Pharmacare plan that matters a great deal more to you if you or someone you love is currently unable to access the resources that they need. Erica talked about that yesterday when it came to supervised consumption. She says, I have one position on this. She said, but maybe you should talk to me again after somebody I love, if and when somebody I love is impacted by this issue. She acknowledged, I respected that when she said that my opinion on this might change. And we've got emails from some of you. I'm going to read, as a matter of fact, an email from Allison a little later in this episode. She wrote in, she said her blood was boiling when we were talking about the national Pharmacare plan yesterday. Why? Well, because it's an impact that it's an issue rather that directly impacts her family. In Allison's case, her 16-year-old son, and she tells us her story. I'm going to tell you. She's given us permission to share it coming up in this episode. Our leadoff guest today, we're going to introduce you to Dr. Rupider Toor in just a second. She makes other people's health priorities her business. That's her number one thing. She's an award-winning physician. You're going to go, hang on a second. What are you talking about? Award-winning physician? No, just wait. Wait till we read through her CV. She's been on the show before, but she goes way above and beyond where a lot of healthcare practitioners, where a lot of physicians would go. And that's saying something, because the career is a higher calling, as we know. But Dr. Toor has been lobbying for certain elements, certain coverage as part of a national Pharmacare plan for a long time. And in a second, we're going to find out why it matters so much to her and why she thinks it should matter so much to the rest of us. That's coming up in 30 seconds. First, I've got a quick message to the job seekers out there that are looking for a change of pace, a new opportunity. You're looking for something where you can find job satisfaction, where you can recognize, realize, chase your true potential. You can launch a rewarding career in real estate with Rello's affordable online courses that make it easy to pass your exam and get your real estate license so you can start running your own business, setting your own hours, being your own boss, plus unlimited earning potential. How good does that sound? And you'll be helping people every single day as they buy or sell their homes. The best part about Rello, what we love about it, is they've got a team of experts that meet online every single weekend to help you prep for the exam sessions. And after you've launched and got your real estate license, the relationship doesn't end there. Rello invests in your success. Great deal for Real Talkers right now, by the way. 20% off any Rello real estate course when you use the promo code REALTALK when you get started at rello.ca. That's RELO.ca. RELO.ca. The promo code, all one word, REALTALK, takes 20% off. Well, Dr. Rupider Toor, last time she joined us on our show, was advocating for universal contraception, and she had filed a petition with the federal government. And before we get into the interview and specifically talking about a national Pharmacare plan, I'm curious to know how that advocacy worked out, how that petition worked out. Dr. Toor is the medical director and founder at the IUD and Women's Clinic. She's a clinical lecturer at the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary and a great friend of this show. Welcome back. It's so nice to see your face. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi, Ryan. I'm really excited to be back on your show again.
Yeah, for those that did not catch that interview, and we're going to link to it. If they want to, after people hear you today, they're going to want to hear your previous interview as well, because I know you're going to light a fire under a bunch of people in a great way. But talk to us about why you've been working so hard to make contraception universally available and some of the steps that you've been taking.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I was here was about 6 months ago, and we were talking about the petition that we had launched with the House of Commons. So with the federal government advocating for, universal access to free prescription contraception for all Canadians. And we were ecstatic because, as you know, that was included in with the new Pharmacare announcement. So the federal government last week made their announcement saying that they were going to include contraception and diabetes medications as their proof of concept for the Pharmacare program.
And so this obviously on the surface feels like a win, right? The advocacy worked. So you're I would imagine to a certain degree you're celebrating it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, lots of mixed emotions. There were some newspaper reports that had come out as early as, February 23rd, sort of talking about this. And so, we were really excited that, our advocacy had been effective and had, helped to influence some of those decisions that were being made. But then also, maybe I don't know, confusion or upset or, heartbreak really, when the Alberta health minister said that they planned to opt out of this Pharmacare program.
Okay, I want to let people know, by the way, if they're going to dig through our archives, it was August 17th of 2023 that you and I spoke. People can just search for the episode titled "The Case for Government-Funded Contraception." So at this stage, I would imagine that, and again, I'm speculating here, but my guess is that the health minister or that the provincial government would say, well, we're just not convinced that the feds have Alberta's best interest in mind, or we're not convinced that we want Ottawa, carrying out or managing our Pharmacare plan. We just want the funds and we'll manage it ourselves. Would that be a scenario or a situation that you'd be okay with as long as the coverage was still there? Do you care who's administering it? Or do you have an inherent problem with what's happening right now, this development between Alberta and Ottawa?
I mean, I respect that the Alberta government tries to protect Alberta interests, but certainly I think they need to look at, when that conflict now actually puts Albertans directly at a disadvantage. And so I think, I'm all for universal access to contraception and diabetes medicine, as the federal government has stated. So whoever administers a program, as long as the access is universal, which is not what we have right now in Alberta.
Okay, I mean, the Alberta health minister has gone on record saying that, quote, the majority of Albertans have robust pharmacare coverage. I'll be honest, I have no idea. This is your wheelhouse. As far as you know, referencing the data available to you, how factual is that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I would take issue with that, a bit for sure. So by her own stats, she says 76% of Albertans have coverage. Now that means 1 in 4 Albertans have no coverage at all. So that means they are 100% responsible for all of their costs when it comes to their medication. So that is a large number of people. The other people that have access, so, through the government plan, if your income is less than 17,000, that is 1.7, Ryan. So if you are working a minimum wage job, you are making double that amount. So if you are a working Albertan, you will not be able to access that Alberta low income program. And the other program that they have is for seniors 65 and over. And I've heard from many seniors that, that program, it might help with some of the costs, but it does not help with all of the costs. And costs are still a barrier for those people. The other Albertans are left, either paying for their Blue Cross premiums on their own or having those subsidies or having that subsidized through their employer. But again, there are costs involved with that. There are co-pays, there are deductibles, there are maximum spend limits, and those plans don't cover everything. So again, it may cover for some of those costs, but not all. And what we're hearing from Albertans clearly is that those costs are still restrictive and are really impacting their ability to fill those prescriptions and get the treatments that they need.
So, like at a ground level, real life application here, it just means that a lot of people are foregoing what they need, right? With the foregoing medications they need. In some circumstances, it could be, diabetic, people with diabetes. In other circumstances, it could be people, without contraception. And obviously you went at length when we last spoke in August of 2023 to the implications of that. But I mean, that's the most obvious level. That's what I think needs to get people's attention, is that there are folks that require medication to live their healthiest life, and they're just unable to do it.
Yeah, and that is obviously compounded, to a great extent with the affordability crisis that we're in right now. So as housing gets more expensive, groceries are getting more expensive, utility bills, people are really having to make decisions around where they're spending their money. Do they spend their money on their medications, or do they pay their bills that month? And, it is well documented that many, many Canadians, including Albertans, ration their medications. They spread them out. They take less than what they're supposed to. And that's all an effort to save money. And, we can talk about the economics, from a personal level, but we know that this policy is such a strong policy on a public economic level, because as your listeners can understand, prevention is always going to be cheaper than paying for the medical consequences. So if we imagine a diabetic that does not get access to their medications and the complications that they will sort of suffer as a result of that. So for example, leg amputations, the number one reason is diabetes outside of accidental. And so, if that person does not get that medication and now they end up requiring things like leg amputations, that is going to cost the healthcare system an incredibly more amount of money than it would have cost just to pay for their medications. And we're not factoring in the cost to that individual. How do we capture the cost for that individual now having to live with an amputated leg? So, there are so many things at stake here. And I think, I understand why, you mentioned, people's blood is boiling, right? We can talk a little bit more about some of those emotions that Albertans are feeling when they're feeling left out of something that could really, really have direct benefit to either themselves or someone that they love.
Yeah, no kidding. Why don't I was going to read this email from Allison later. You want to hear it? Why don't I just read it now? So she wrote into talk@ryanjesperson.com. She said, my blood was boiling when I was listening to your conversation on March 5th. That's our March 5th episode. She said, in particular, Erica Baruti's take on Pharmacare. This is something I desperately want, said Allison. My 16-year-old son is a type 1 diabetic diagnosed 3 years ago, who is beyond worried about what he'll do when he becomes an adult. And when he's not covered through my work benefits any longer, Allison says, which, by the way, is still only partial coverage, she says, and the Alberta insulin pump therapy program, which is only covered for youth under the age of 18. My son sees how much we spend every month on all his life-saving medications and equipment. He knows how much of a game-changer diabetes management has been with his insulin pump. When we heard that his supplies would be available for free, she has it in bold and underlined, for free through a new national Pharmacare program, we were thrilled. We were relieved. But then we hear that our home province wants to opt out without even knowing the details. She says it's all political, looking for reasons why we shouldn't do this, pointing fingers at irrelevant talking points, no hint of compassion or empathy for how a program like this could be life-changing for people. Allison says, as a mom of a diabetic, it was honestly soul-crushing listening to that perspective on the show, clearly representative of our own provincial government's take. Why can't people just come together to figure out how something like this could work to benefit the citizens of Alberta instead of pushing back against it because the idea came from the Liberals, maybe the NDP? Says, I get that everybody plays for different teams here, but this is about people's lives, for God's sake. Discounting this type of program that's working in other countries, by the way, without even seeming to have, to be open to conversation about how it could work is beyond frustrating. Allison says, I am so disillusioned at where we are with the political discourse right now. She says, I realize that this isn't a news flash, but your episode just highlighted for me that politics is just a game, that people want to win at all costs, no matter the consequence. That from Allison.
Yeah, I mean, lots of good points there. I would agree that, some of this seems like political maneuvering. And, the unfortunate thing is they're using people's lives, and that's what they're gambling with. And, when we want to talk about numbers, there are 400,000 diagnosed diabetics in Alberta. And we're thinking probably closer to 600,000 when we think about the ones that are undiagnosed. When we look at the contraceptive piece, we know that there's about 2 million, men and women of reproductive age that could benefit from contraceptives. And keep in mind that contraceptives are not just, used for birth control. They are also, significant medical treatments that help for significant, medical conditions like heavy menstrual bleeding, endometriosis, which can be an incredibly painful condition, and for precancerous conditions as well. And so, this could help, by our estimates, more than 2.5 million Albertans. So if that's not you directly, that will be someone that you love. And this is going to make life more affordable. We talk about the affordability crisis, and having to sort of make decisions around, where to spend that money. We had just started, we're starting to get some information on Twitter, just from stories about people who, are sharing some of the suffering that them and their families have gone through when they are not able to get their hands on their prescription medications for their conditions like diabetes or for contraceptives.
Yeah, and we're just to state the obvious here, Dr. Rupider Toor, if you're joining us just now, live streaming the audio on the Mixlr audio app presented by California Closets out of Calgary. We're here to talk about contraception. I mean, that's kind of like one of your main things. Obviously, we'll talk about Project Empower in just a little bit, and obviously that's something that you've been on a mission for. The Allison email about her diabetic son is obviously very powerful, but there's also people in 100 other circumstances that we could be talking about here, right? I know that none of us know too much about what this national plan would cover, wouldn't cover, but it's safe to say that there are people from all walks of life with all kinds of health challenges that are currently, for affordability reasons or access reasons or otherwise, unable to get the meds they need. I mean, this is more than just a conversation just about contraception and diabetes.
Yeah, I mean, so your listeners, might be surprised to know that Canada is the only country in the world that has universal access to healthcare, but does not have a universal Pharmacare program. And so what that means is that when you want to access a doctor, so when patients want to see me, they do not need to worry about how much money they have in their bank account. They just use their healthcare card, and that gets them access to a doctor, to a hospital stay, to emergency room visits. But that is not the case when it comes to filling in the prescription for the treatment. So when I write a prescription now for a patient, their ability to fill that prescription is going to be dependent on how much money they have in their bank account, or what is, their access to or coverage for their medications. And so there has been, Pharmacare is a huge monumental announcement in Canada. It is one of the biggest advancements we've had in health. And this was, the plan from the start. Tommy Douglas talked about this when he talked about universal healthcare. The universal Pharmacare was always supposed to be a part of that. And so this is a really exciting time for Canada. This has been a monumental, announcement. And they were able to fast track 2 medications to get improved health outcomes for people in a much quicker way. And so this is not, the only meds that will be covered. There obviously will be more as they unroll that. That will take time. But to fast track this, I think, the federal government was really looking at the affordability crisis. And we can also talk about the healthcare crisis, right? With COVID, the healthcare system across the country is under such strain and crisis, I would say. And, any kind of reform on that is obviously going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. And so we may not see those health benefits right away. But this is one policy that would help, improve the health of Canadians and Albertans immediately. They are talking about making these benefits available by the end of this calendar year, if not early into 2025. And so it would be an immediate health benefit to so many, millions of Canadians and Albertans. And so I think, we have to look at the context of what is being offered. This is an incredibly generous offer. And, I have not heard a valid reason as of yet as to why, Alberta should opt out of something that every other Canadian is getting. Why are we being left out? It breaks my heart because I started this advocacy work in this province for the patients that I see at my clinic, and they are still not going to benefit from this. And so, I guess our advocacy is still incomplete. We will be launching our Alberta campaign in the next several weeks, hopefully as early as next week, to bring some attention to this. And I think, part of it is education. So maybe the Minister of Health is not on the ground. She does not see the, heartbreaking stories that I see every single day of people who really have to, their treatment really depends on their money. Like, how much money do they have really depends on their health status. And that is not equitable. And I don't think that is representative of us as Canadians as to what we want our country to look like. And so I think we need to, start this conversation. We need to maybe educate, the health minister, because I know for sure lots of Albertans, struggle with this. And so maybe we just need to, let her know that this is really what's happening. And then really maybe use our advocacy to sort of, put some political pressure on as well.
I want to let people know, by the way, that we will be speaking with Premier Danielle Smith. She's going to join me in studio on Wednesday. That's next Wednesday, March 13th. So obviously I'll ask her about this. People can submit questions for consideration to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Catch that live at 8:30 or later on demand, wherever you get your podcasts, or of course right here on YouTube. Dr. Rupider Toor joining us. I want to get to our live chat here. There's a bunch of people sharing either their personal experiences, personal perspectives. Obviously, M. Aitken quite rightfully says most people with fixed incomes don't have benefits. That's relevant. Others say, Katriana says, this government has quietly taken away so much drug coverage for public insurance. I'm a type 1 diabetic and pay for a CGM. I think is that continuous glucose monitoring? Is that what that is, Doc? I think CGM. It's a true game changer, says Katriana, in my management. Goes on to talk about Blue Cross coverage. A lot of people talking about how their Blue Cross is costing them as much as their prescriptions. Tracy says low income and to a degree middle income individuals and families are making tough decisions like we're describing here on a daily basis. Yeah, I mean, just a ton of people. That's what Denis says. He says when he lost his employer coverage, his premiums would have been equal to the cost of his chronic meds. Jillian says, people saying you should have employee coverage for your meds also are the same folks saying public servants have it too good with their employee benefits. Jillian says, get me off this planet for reals. Is it kind of ironic to you in a way, or maybe just at least good timing, discouraging, but maybe good timing that you can shine the light on this issue as we approach International Women's Day coming up on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, we are really excited about International Women's Day. Like, we can talk about this policy, when we look at it from a sort of gender equity perspective, your listeners may be surprised to know that, well, obviously we look back on the history, but in 1919, some women were allowed the ability to vote. And in 1969, birth control became decriminalized. And so as far as a policy that really helps to even the playing field for women, having universal access to contraception is key. And so, this is a really exciting policy to be celebrating on International Women's Day on Friday, March the 8th. And so, it's exciting because we can celebrate it, but yet the women in Alberta and those people who want to control, their pregnancies, won't be able to celebrate.
I want to reference something here in closing, Doc. We respect your time. I know you're going to have to bolt, but I'm trying to find her comment. I'll have to sum it up. Here it is. Tony, she says, I have coverage, so this doesn't affect me directly, but I'm okay with paying into a fund that helps people with their medications. How much of this is like this is almost everything in politics, isn't it? Convincing the public, like creating and applying political pressure. Like, how much of this comes down to the people?
Yeah. And I think, we have to keep in mind that we live in a democracy, right? And so sometimes we think the government's in charge and this is what they want to do and we can't do anything about it. And I want to challenge that and say that, no, the people are in charge. They represent us. And if we're not happy with some of the policies that they're proposing, it is really our job to let them know. And so, I hear words like, people feeling, angry, enraged, betrayed, confused, feeling shaken in their faith, the hypocrisy, right? The blood boiling. And so these are all sentiments of, people are very upset. And I would say we want to take that emotion and put it into action, right? And so at the very least, I would encourage all of your listeners, number one, just to educate their circle of influence about what is going on, because this is relevant to almost every single Albertan. And then number two, to take those emotions that we're feeling, that anger, and turn it into action. And, send an email or a phone call to the health minister, just explaining your circumstances or why you think that, this would help either someone, yourself or someone that you love, or why you think it's a good policy for Alberta. I think, we can maybe put some pressure on and just let her know. I think, the sentiment she's giving out is that, we're good. Alberta's fine. We don't need this. And that is not what I'm hearing. That has not been my lived experience with my patients. And so some of that is just re-education. And so I would encourage at the very least, on International International Women's Day, for all the women out there. And, I think about this for our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces, like all of that next generation to come, to make that phone call or that email. And for all the women, that you love, and all the diabetics, and just all the Albertans that you think, whether it's your neighbors, your coworkers, that could benefit from this. This is one thing that we can do to gift that to the people that we care about. And just, again, claim, the power that we have as a people, and that's in our voice, and we need to make our voices heard. And so maybe we need to just start talking about this to each other and talking about it with the people who are making these decisions, letting them know that this is, how it's going to affect us, and, what we want. Alberta wants to opt in. This is clear. This policy for the contraceptives, 83% of Albertans approved of this policy. We have not yet done any polling on the diabetes one, and perhaps that's something we will look at. But, this is something that's hugely popular all across Alberta. It doesn't matter if you are a man, a woman, what your income level is, if you live rural or, urban, so many people are behind this policy. And I think we just need to start talking about this and letting those who can make these decisions for us know how we feel.
Your passion, your conviction is evident, and there's a ton of people in our chat right now. I'll just kind of sum it up into one compliment sandwich, or just saying that they appreciate your advocacy and the manner in which you articulate these important points. Dr. Rupider Toor, our guest, is the co-founder and Chief Medical Officer at Project Empower. Project Empower with her at the end. We'll link to it in the show notes. They're improving awareness and access to long-acting birth control. You can learn more how you can ignite empowerment by joining forces with them, supporting them by visiting their website. Thanks so much for making time for us, Doctor. It's always a pleasure to check in with you.
Thank you, Ryan. I hope the next time we speak, we'll be on even better terms and we'll have more to celebrate.
Yeah, I love it. I love celebrating successful advocacy, Doc. Thanks very much, Dr. Toor there, with a great point. I saw this from Jill, by the way, who said, I'd be okay with a plan run by Quebec. Remember that Quebec's kind of like had a plan. I mean, if you look across the country, and Alberta's not the only ones that are saying no to this. There's hesitation on behalf of other provinces as well. But Alberta was the first to be like, nah, not into it. Now, without really seeing details, some people love it. Some people think it's the right move. They don't think that Ottawa should be managing this. They think that Alberta should be managing this. Others, like Dr. Toor, obviously feel differently. Jill says, I'd be okay with the plan run by Quebec, but I'm in Alberta with David Parker in charge, so they'll only fund herbs and crystals and group prayer. That from Jill. Did you see David Parker's tweet last night? Did you see this?
Was it about putting onions on your kids' feet to...
Onions and mustard powder?
To cure the flu?
No. But this has been a pretty prominent story. We talked about on the show how the founder of Take Back Alberta, who has been on Real Talk, you're welcome to check out that episode. He's on his best behavior when he was with us. But basically had his own flamethrower out, not presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, but really saying horrific things about NDP leadership candidate Sarah Hoffman, saying pretty brutal things about Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. By the way, I can't tell you what we'll be talking about with Naheed, but I can let you know that on Tuesday, March 12th, he will be joining us on the show. How's that? So Tuesday, March 12th, circle your calendars. Wow, I had a hard time with that one. Naheed Nenshi will join us on the show. So Parker was taking shots at him. And then, of course, his one that grabbed all the attention, his tweet about Jenny Byrne and Pierre Poilievre, talking about Pierre Poilievre's wife, invoking a past physical relationship between the leader of the official opposition and his senior advisor. Obviously wildly inappropriate, obviously very inconvenient for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who would probably prefer not to be in a full-blown war with who could be the future Prime Minister of Canada. You get what I'm saying? And so on this show and in any other venue for political commentary, people were saying, well, the Premier's got to do something about this. She's got to have a plan here. She's got to say something. And other people are going, well, what is she going to say? David Parker controls the UCP board. David Parker pulls all the strings. David Parker. Well, it turns out the Premier did talk to him. And it's prompted this tweet. Went out last night, March 5th, about 8:30 in the evening. Parker says, I've spent the last week reflecting on the Premier's words. They obviously spoke. He says, I've consulted with priests, pastors, mentors, friends, and many members of Take Back Alberta, and they are unanimous in their criticism. I weaponized my words instead of speaking the truth in love. Parker says, I've long justified my actions online due to the many personal attacks and threats levied against me. A constant barrage of personal attacks and death threats. All of my excuses are lies. Says, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has commanded me to love my enemies. I have failed at this command. I have returned insult with insult, injury with injury, and I've brought disgrace to the name of Christ. The only path forward is repentance, says David Parker. That means turning around and going the other way. I will not use personal insults in my public communications going forward. I am absolutely positive that if I stumble in this regard, my haters will call me out for it. He goes on to quote Christ. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. He says, I have not received these insults and persecution as a blessing. People love to claim they're being persecuted, but I digress. He says, I'm not asking for anyone's forgiveness. Other people will have to decide whether they forgive me on their own terms. My actions going forward will speak to whether this statement is sincere or not. And that last sentence, as far as I'm concerned, is the only one that matters. The actions going forward will speak to whether this statement is sincere or not. Now, I don't care about David Parker's relationship with his personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I don't care about how David Parker perceives the commandments of Christ or how he understands his relationship with his priests and pastors and advisors. That's not my concern. What I'm interested in is how Take Back Alberta influences the government of Alberta and how the government of Alberta is influenced by a group that obviously is not bound by the same restrictions, parameters of decency, standard operating procedures that other political influence groups, that other lobby groups, that other third parties would adhere to. And ultimately, it comes down to Alberta's reputation, right? I mean, ultimately, it comes down to how the Alberta government, Alberta, is seen by the rest of the country, how we can cooperate with other levels of government. I mean, that's what I'm most interested in. So you can let me know. I mean, ultimately, you know, is it up to us to speculate? I mean, we could run an unofficial Twitter poll. Do you think David Parker's sincere? Doesn't feel like the right thing to do. We don't know his heart. I think probably for him, it's more of an inconvenience than it is a moment of, I'm forgetting. It's been too long since Bible school. Who was the guy? Someone in the chat will help us out. Who was the guy? Was it Saul that became Paul after he had the moment on the path when the Lord appeared to him? Johnny, we both skipped Sunday school that week.
Don't come to me on this.
Yeah. Someone in our chat will help us out. There was somebody that had like their moment on the path. Maybe Parker had that moment. I guess we're making like Premier a deity in this story. In my opinion, I think it was probably more like he got maybe a reminder of maybe the power dynamic and who he's fucking with, essentially, and probably realized, as he says, that, you know, where is it? He says, I've talked to many members of Take Back Alberta. They are unanimous in their criticism. That sounds to me like an entire group saying, you may be out of here if this behavior doesn't change. And that's not good for somebody who's in love with the position that they're in. Yeah, thanks to the live chat. They're saying, it was Saul. It was Saul who became known as Paul after finding Christ. Credit to Wise Kyle and Tracy and Akat for that. That's 2 points for each of you. Talk at ryanjesperson.com if you have thoughts on this. We want to get to some more of your emails coming up in just a little bit. We have a pretty excellent one here talking about employer benefit plans. Talking about our conversation with Shauna Feth, CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. Of course, that was earlier this week. She joins us the first Monday of every month. That's our March 4th episode. She digs into the Alberta budget and the position of the Alberta Chambers, but they're experiencing something pretty interesting on this National Pharmacare plan as well. Two of their biggest memberships, the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, are welcoming the National Pharmacare plan. Some of their smaller chambers of commerce, who are also important members, are saying, hell no. And so their membership doesn't agree. And so we asked Shauna about that, and it prompted an email from Emily as well, which we're going to get to in just a second. But first, I wanted to put Eden Landscaping on your radar. If you're one of those in central, in particular in the northern part of Alberta, the Metro Edmonton region, and you're looking to entertain this summer, graduation, anniversary, whatever it is, maybe it's a very special birthday, could be someone's retirement party. If you want your project ready to go for June, ready to go for July, now is the time to get in touch with Eden at landscapeedmonton.ca, a custom builder with more than 20 years of on-the-ground experience in Edmonton and area. They're known for their personalized solutions, tailored designs that reflect your individual style, your preferences, your lifestyle, creating a beautiful, unique, harmonious outdoor experience. We've worked with them. We've seen them deliver on budget. I know that matters to most people. You can make contact today with Eden Landscaping at landscapeedmonton.ca. Hey, a shout out to those of you that are considering a career change, maybe considering deepening your knowledge or understanding in specific subject matter. You've always been intrigued by maybe AI or maybe human resources, or maybe you've always wanted to go earn that MBA. Athabasca University is ready for you as Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. By choosing Athabasca University, you benefit from their commitment to flexible study options, accessibility for students around the globe, and personalized learning plans. Your education, your way with Athabasca University at athabascau.ca. And we're soon to be talking, as much as I hate to acknowledge it, about wildfires. 'Tis the season, and they're expecting a hell of a season this spring. That means that the team at Complete Care Restoration is going to be ready to go. They've been helping Albertans get back on their feet, back into their residences, back into their businesses for more than 25 years with professional property restoration services in Edmonton and surrounding area. As a matter of fact, they have teams on the road right now as we speak, rebuilding communities that were impacted by fire last summer. And of course, their number one job is restoring normalcy after the flames. Take our word for it. We've worked with them. We give 2 thumbs up to Complete Care Restoration at completecarerestoration.ca. Why don't we go ahead and play a clip? We pulled a clip from our conversation yesterday with Euan, Thomson, and Anthony Furey. This was based on Euan's cover feature in the March issue of Alberta Views magazine. You can check it out at albertaviews.ca. He asks, well, what's wrong with rehab? It's an investigation, essentially, of the Alberta government's approach to addressing the opioid crisis. And long story short, TLDR, as they say, Anthony Furey, who is a former colleague of mine in talk radio, newspaper columnist, political commentator for a long time out of Ontario. He ran for the mayor's chair in Toronto, you may remember. He's an outspoken critic of supervised consumption services. He supported legalization of cannabis. He supports rehab and detox. He does not support supervised consumption. Euan, on the other hand, is very bullish on supervised consumption, says the evidence supports the necessity of this healthcare provision. So we got him to dig into it on our March 5th episode, and here's a highlight.
One of the most, I think, acutely monitored facilities right now in Canada is the Leslieville drug injection site. It's a facility with a broader health hub because that was where a young mother was tragically killed as a couple of drug dealers were battling it out in front of the facility. And they are just not fulfilling their terms of the bargain.
I've spent an awful lot of time in overdose prevention sites. I've never felt safer around drugs than I do in an overdose prevention site. These are extremely safe places for people to go when you're indoors inside of these places.
Well, I'm glad to hear you weren't killed in front of one, but a lady in Toronto was.
Listen, we can point at single anecdotes till the cows come home, Mr. Furey. This is not a situation where we should be taking one piece of data and applying it to the entire population.
Not a single anecdote. I know people who know her. It's a family system.
Absolutely.
It's a community we have. So,
absolutely,
all lives matter, whether we're talking about the victims of the drug crisis or the people in the collateral damage.
I don't see, I think what you pointed out was really valid in terms of identifying that, drug violence is a real thing. It's a real problem. So I don't understand the constant drive to be criminalizing people. Why don't we bring the market into a regulated setting where we can collect taxes, where we can eliminate the policing around it and make it look more like the legal drugs that exist now? You advocated for cannabis legalization 10 years ago, and I commend you for that because that's forward thinking. We need to be thinking about all drugs that way in terms of what gains are to be made from getting rid of these illegal markets and all of the crime that comes along with them. These are real public safety problems, and I'm not downplaying at all the issue of public safety that arises when we create an illegal market. The same thing happened with alcohol prohibition 100 years ago. Not that alcohol is a perfect market right now. There are absolutely health consequences to having legal markets. And I think that getting to a point where people are profiting less from drug markets is kind of the goal that we need to be striving towards here.
That was Euan Thomson and Anthony Furey on our March 5th episode of Real Talk. You can read Euan's full feature, What's Wrong with Rehab, in the current issue of Alberta Views magazine. You can actually read it for free online right now at albertaviews.ca. But I want to put the call out to Real Talkers. I know a lot of you want to put your money where your mouth is, and I know a lot of you feel very strongly about supporting independent, fact-checked journalism, and that's why I want to encourage you to subscribe to Alberta Views magazine today. The promo code AVRJ, just think about Alberta Views, Ryan Jesperson, AVRJ, when you subscribe at albertaviews.ca, knocks 50% off the price of an annual subscription, meaning that you're going to get 10 issues delivered to your door for $20. So unbelievable price there, and a great way to keep that journalism, that important investigative journalism, alive and well in the province of Alberta. My thanks to the two of them for joining us. I thought it was like, for me, Johnny, the two of them, they got into it enough. It was a legitimate debate for sure. I was curious to see how Anthony would leverage that story of the 2-year-old, the toddler near Ottawa. They found her with the syringe in the playground. Obviously, a nightmare scenario for anybody. We can all agree. He didn't even bring it up.
But he brought up another one.
He did bring up the mom, and this was a tragic, obviously a horrific situation. A young mom shot outside a supervised consumption service. Now, he said, between two drug dealers that were warring it out. That's one of those things I saw a lot of our audience members referencing, the power of an anecdote, and this is an anecdote. An anecdote is not evidence, or at least it provides a limited evidence.
I didn't like the using of the word anecdote either, but I kind of agreed that he was cherry picking some data there, right?
That crime and that horrific tragedy did prompt a review. That was just this summer, of supervised consumption offerings in Ontario, obviously, as it should. And, I got a couple of emails from people going, well, why wouldn't you just bring on Euan to present the facts? Why wouldn't you just bring on Euan to talk about what his research showed? Why bring Anthony on, as an agitator? That's not it. We're bringing on Anthony because I think Anthony represents the thoughts, the feelings, the convictions of, millions of Canadians. Not everybody agrees on this, and I think that this show needs to be a forum where we can talk it out and hear the different arguments presented, and then you can decide which one you think holds more water. If you had to name a winner yesterday, I felt like Euan probably won that debate, but we didn't declare a winner. I think we just looked at it and said Anthony had his say, Euan had his say, and then we leave it to you, the smartest talk show audience in the country, to figure out where you stand on it. I'd be curious to know if anybody's mind was changed after that debate on the show yesterday. If that is you, if your mind was changed on this, we'd love to hear from you. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. Let us know what changed your mind. Let us know how your position changed. We got an email from Emily, who wrote in after my conversation on Monday, that was March 4th, with Shauna Feth, CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, talking about the budget, talking about the National Pharmacare plan, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. They have Political Action Day coming up on the 14th of March. It's a cool event. You should check it out. Emily says, I have to wonder about business sense in Alberta. Your guest, Ms. Feth, said that 70% of employers offer benefit plans. But that doesn't mean that 70% of their employees automatically get the benefits, not part-timers, not temporary contracts, not new employees, not gig workers. She talked about education too. Sure, some companies come to Alberta for lower taxes, but a lot more, I bet, come for skilled, healthy employees, a great standard of living. So where do you educate our youngins if you keep cutting funds to schools because you want to keep taxes low? You just bring them over from India, and then we're just complaining that housing's unaffordable. Oh, but a bunch of Alberta companies are developers. They can just build more suburbs and download the cost of new services, infrastructure onto municipalities, I guess, right? Says Emily. She says municipalities can't raise taxes because that's bad for business, so they cut services. Wait, though. She's painting a dire picture, but she's not wrong. She says a bunch of Alberta companies are private services, for-profit daycares, medical insurance, charter schools, private health care. They'll bring you a cup of tea while you wait. Now, that's nice. But Alberta companies like Walmart are paying top dollar to employees so they can afford private services, right? No. She says Alberta companies are scraping by and can't afford to pay a living wage. Too many taxes, I guess. Emily says, wouldn't it just be simpler to let the feds keep a few more people alive with the National Pharmacare plan. Let them pay to keep us out of hospitals, because that's what diabetes medications do. Oh, yeah, and then your employees keep showing up to work, too, because they're not sick. So your business can thrive. And on top of that, you don't have to pay them benefits. What do they teach in business school these days, wonders Emily. Must be that pinko socialist, subpar, publicly funded type of school. She says, and by the way, Charles Adler for CEO of the CBC. But I do like CBC Gem, though. She says, don't take away Heartland. That from Emily. That was a great email. I like that one. Yeah, Charles Adler commenting on how he would fix the CBC. If you go on LinkedIn, you'll see that they currently have a hell of a job posting up there. The president and CEO of the CBC. The job is currently posted on LinkedIn, so we were asking Chuck if he was thinking of applying. I didn't get the sense he was taking it seriously. Every Wednesday, and we've got more to come here in just a quick second, but every Wednesday, we have a chance to get out to the mountains, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper. And we encourage you to make your own Jasper memories. And this week, we want to let you know about what's happening, in particular up at Marmot Basin. It is absolutely, I mean, if you're listening to this, when we're doing this show, March 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, it has been dumping out at Marmot Basin. The snow hasn't stopped for the past few days, so the conditions are absolutely fantastic, including up on that brand new knob chair, that knob quad that they've been so excited about for so long. This is the first year they've been able to open it, but the snow hasn't really been cooperating for very long, right? They haven't been getting the snow they wanted. Well, up until recently, I mean, it is absolutely stunning right now, and because of the warmer temperatures, they got higher elevation, then, you know, skiing is an absolute joy right now at Marmot. So some upcoming events on the hill I want you to be aware of. They've got an après ski event happening in the Caribou Bar and Grill with live music from local legend Pete Cherniowski. That's coming up on March 16th. On March 25th, they're going to kick off their summer camps. It's a great time to register your kids now for these 5-day spring camps. With options for skiers in the 4 to 6 age range and then the 6 to 14 age range. A really neat opportunity for the little ones to develop big skills. At the end of March, that's the 30th and the 31st, you can experience the best of spring skiing and soak up the sun with a mid-mountain barbecue lunch, live music at the Corona Après Series. That'll also happen through April. So March 30th and 31st and then into April as well. And why not finish the month of March by skiing with the Easter Bunny? Yeah, that's right, March 31st. If you don't have plans yet, the long-eared mascot's going to be handing out excellent goodies around the mountain through the entire day. Now, if you're not necessarily down with downhill skiing, you could go cross-country skiing on some of Jasper's many groomed and scenic tracks. You can learn more and start planning at either jasper.travel or check out skimarmot.com. And we'd love to see your own MyJasper Memories. Just hashtag MyJasper and Real Talk RJ. You could see your photos featured on an upcoming episode of Real Talk. See, it's always so much nicer to talk about snowfall when it's something that we can celebrate as opposed to something that just means we've got to brush off our car and slide around on the roads. You've been managing okay with these dumps we've been having in the last while?
Yeah, I'm taking the bus, so I've been avoiding all this stress you're talking about. I don't know what's going on. I see it though. I see the mirror glass roads out there, and I'm like, nah.
How has that adjustment been for you as someone who is like vehicle commuting? I mean, bus is still a vehicle, but you know what I mean? You were driving for a long time, and then you've just recently started taking the bus. Do you find like mental health wise, do you like relax on the trip in? You take some time to mentally debrief on the way home? Is it?
It's sometimes I can actually work on there. I mean, I open up my laptop, I get some of the guest, visuals and stuff we have right here for the show ready, but one thing I've noticed is a lot of this hubbub about, the LRT is unsafe and the buses are filled with drug. Man, I've been taking the bus for about 5-6 months now. I think I've had 3 incidents and most of them were just people kind of, early in the morning yelling or whatever, but I've never seen violence. I've never seen, someone attack someone else. Honestly, I've seen sad things, which is people who are freezing to death, clearly, houseless and or suffering from addiction, on a train, sleeping, and then, somebody will come on.
Because it's where they can find shelter, basically.
It's all they have, right? And so yesterday, as we were talking about this, and I feel like, I know we were ganging up on Erica, but it kind of was at one point, it was like 3-on-1. I had to say to her yesterday, I'm like, I'm sorry if we ganged up on you. But it's good to have we had to have all the perspectives, right? But the one point, when she was talking, I just started thinking, like you said, these people are human beings. And I see them every day on the train where, like, I don't know what we're going to do leading back to the consumption sites if we don't have these places for people to go.
Yeah.
And like you said yesterday, some people are never going to get off drugs. Some people are going to die in these places, and it's better than dying in an alley. And Ben Affleck, of all people, I saw a video today on the train I was watching, and he said, that last thing that got him, he was an alcoholic, right? That finally got him off alcohol. It wasn't his numerous wives telling him he was a loser, wasn't his kids looking at like him. It was getting to the very bottom and going through so much suffering. He said the only cure for addiction is to suffer so much that one day you get up and say, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Right? And so, yesterday as we were talking about places for people to go, why do we have safe consumption sites? Let's have more treatment centers. Well, treatment centers have really low success rates. So, I think about this every day when I'm on the train. I'm like, if there's no places for these people to go to like you said, just have a little dignity.
Yeah.
Even if they're never going to get better, I just feel like it would be a lot sadder world out there.
Yeah.
If you're going to see, bodies in alleys and people.
That is what's happening.
Doing drugs in playgrounds. You want to keep them out of playgrounds. We need these places, right?
Yeah. You remember we were talking with there's Jordan Reinecker and others. He's from Boyle Street Community Services. We did our Real Talk Roundtable. I think it was 2 Fridays ago on it was following the Chancellor's Forum. It was called Sheltering the Truth. Talking about people experiencing homelessness and the like, and hearing that just in our home city, just in our city, we recognize people are listening to Real Talk from all over the place. Edmonton saw more than 300 deaths on the street last year alone, and those are the ones that are reported that people know about. So, that's like averaging 1 a day just in Edmonton, just on the street. You're not talking about in treatment centers. You're not talking about in hospitals. You're not talking about in palliative care or anywhere else. It's a real perspective check. And I think that there's also, it's interesting because the Alberta government has definitely been, pouring a ton of money. And I mean, the story, if you do some digging, you can read more about it. Just Google Marshall Smith. He's the Premier's chief of staff. Marshall has really a remarkable story. He was in the throes of addiction, was living on the street, and is now the chief of staff to the Premier of Alberta. And he has, I don't speak for Marshall, obviously, but he has very strong convictions on the right way to manage the opioid crisis, or on the right way to address problems around addiction and drug poisoning in Canada. And not everybody agrees with Marshall, but when you look at, people have described him sort of as like the Premier's drug czar, like this is the drug policy czar. So you get a sense of like the Alberta government obviously believes very strongly in treatment, rehab, detox. Some of these are, yes, private clinics. Some of them, yes, are for-profit centers, privately owned. And I know a lot of people have opinions on that. So there's a number of ways you can approach this issue. But the way that I look at it is, even when we walk outside of our studio and we walk past, some of the public transit stations, the bus stops, and you see those advertisements, and one of the advertisements at one of the bus stops is always like, it says something like, there is help for people who use drugs, or there is help for addiction, call this number for resources. That's not a bad thing.
No.
That's great.
Not at all.
And so you need to have those services. That is good that people that are using drugs, people that are in the sort of the claws of addiction, can tap into those resources when they're ready, if they want, if they hit rock bottom like you just described, and utilize those resources, and hopefully experience a healthy life moving forward, and a long and prosperous life. But you also have to look at it like as a multi-pronged approach, where you have to say detox and rehab and drug therapy is great for someone in the longer term, for somebody like tomorrow and the next week and the next month and the next year. But what about like today, right now? What about the person that's using drugs right now that may overdose today, right now? I mean, it doesn't do anyone much of a service to say, well, if you check yourself into rehab and get clean, then no, this person is like literally going to inject drugs in the next 5 minutes, because that is their life at this moment. We need to have those immediate resources as well. It just seems to me to be so very obvious. And so you get this from Anthony Furey yesterday and others, people that just believe it's more of like an ideological thing. When it comes to talking about supervised consumption sites, in other words, places where people can use illegal drugs without being arrested, or you expand the conversation to talk about things like safe supply or safer supply, and you'll find a lot of people get hung up on the premise that the government or taxpayers are giving free drugs to people who are addicts. They're giving free drugs to people, and they just can't. It doesn't matter that you're saying you're saying look at the drug deaths in Canada right now. Look at the fact that statistically speaking, Euan shared this with us yesterday, 41 people a day die in Canada because of drug poisoning or overdose. It's contaminated supply. And so the experts, the health experts are saying that a safe or safer supply could save lives.
Yeah.
But but for a lot of people, there's that hurdle in their mind that says it's just inherently wrong for taxpayers to provide free drugs to people, and so you don't find political will in that circumstance.
Yeah, we need to hear more stories. That's why, like Alberta Girl saying here, I have not heard one former addict endorse legalized hard drugs or safe consumption. Did I miss it? You did. He was on our show. I forget his name. Who was the guy, the former addict?
Oh, yeah.
Got to the bottom of the barrel.
Guy Felicella.
And he said the only reason he came out was because he was using safe consumption, and he started seeing the people there that cared for him, that had no reason to care for him. He's a stranger. He's a drug addict. He doesn't have a dime to his name. He treats everyone like they're disposable.
Yeah.
And one day he just broke down through the kindness of someone who was working there, and it turned his life around. So, I mean, there's such a spectrum here. There's no one right answer, like take all the drugs off the streets or give everyone free drugs or give everyone it's like you're saying, you need all these different things. And I like how you said, like, what are they going to do today? Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and who's addicted to drugs and says, I'm going to call this number and get help today.
Yeah.
They think, where are they going to do drugs, right? And then it takes time, and then it takes a few chances. It takes a few tries before something sticks, and in most cases, it takes something really drastic, like bottom of the barrel, to change. So we need a lot of things helping a lot of people all the time, and none of it is pretty. And I know that's why everyone who's against these things, like, nobody wants a drug addict in a playground. Nobody wants a safe consumption site right next to their house. We all get it, but like, they have to go somewhere.
Yeah, I
right?
agree with you.
So
these are all compelling and important points. Nice pull on Guy Felicella, by the way.
That's his name.
Yeah. May 17th of 2023 was when he joined us. The episode you're looking for, it was a banger of an episode, actually. Markham Hislop was off the top of that show. The episode title is Unethical Oil, Alberta's Secret Shame. And then Guy Felicella and Dr. Andrea Sereda joined us after to talk about harm reduction, safer supply, and political opportunism. Talked about hitting stigma head on. Talked about Guy surviving 6 overdoses and telling us what he wanted us to remember about that issue.
Think about that. 6 times in a place where you're supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
Before it goes through your head. So,
and
like,
he's if you're not familiar with him, like he is probably one of the more remarkable voices on harm reduction in the world, certainly in Canada. He was named by Vancouver Magazine in 2020 to the Van Mag Power 50. You can check out guyfelicella.com. As a matter of fact, I'll link to it in the show notes here so people can learn more about him. But he is, I mean, this is a guy that was like, living the gang life on the street, 6 overdoses.
He's had a hard life.
He's now got a loving wife. He's got a beautiful family, an incredible story. But like, we need to remember people like that. Like, people would have looked at Guy like on his, and he talks about it. Like, listen to the episode. We'll link to it. May 17th, 2023, Real Talk. He talks about what it's like. I mean, to be in a position where you're overdosing again and again and again, and it's almost like you know what's coming, you know what's probably going to happen, and you still don't change the behavior. But you don't view these people, I keep saying it on purpose, our brothers and sisters, as a lost cause. We just can't. That's not how we can operate as a society. I have a real problem with that. And I love this from Mr. Dad in our chat who basically sums this up in one sentence and just says people who are already dead can't recover in rehab.
That's what I was just going to say.
That's such a good comment.
6 times he had to OD before he got it through his head. And for all intents and purposes, he should be dead. And now he's helping other people not die. So, like, of course we need these places where people can do drugs for free and safely, even though everything I just said there, it's sad, it's scary, and nobody likes to hear it, but they need to be here.
If what Johnny and I are talking about, or some of our guests are talking about, has resonated with you, we welcome your feedback to talk@ryanjesperson.com. As you can see, when we're referencing these episodes and we're going back to them, I'm going to go back to another one in just a sec with Fort Chipewyan First Nation Chief Al and Adam. I'm not sure if you saw this. I appreciate a real talker that actually brought this to our attention, but he's notified the CEO of the Alberta Energy Regulator. They're suing Imperial Oil. It reminds me of another episode that we had with Chief Adam a while ago talking about that. You remember that tailings pond leak? Remember that leak that was going on from the facility, the Kearl facility, Kearl, the Kearl facility, the toxic leak that was happening for like 9 months before anybody was notified. And I look back on these and you realize that the value of these conversations were happening. When a show ends, the conversation doesn't end. It's just that we're contributing, we're adding, we're deepening our knowledge and our understanding of it. And then, of course, we're keeping these stories and issues on our radar, which is kind of the whole point of why we're here. And that doesn't happen without your feedback and without, your participation in the show, editorially and otherwise. And we're so grateful for that. I want to get to that update on Chief Alan Adam. Plus, we want to remember a friend. I want to remember somebody that joined us on the show. Some very, very sad news this week, the passing of someone. And I was going to say way before their time, but I guess it was his time. But it doesn't make it any less tragic. I'm going to remember Kyle Dube in just a quick second. But first, I wanted to put on your radar Friesen Brothers with the opportunity to customize Easter dinners right now. This is something that our family has been doing for years with Friesen Brothers. I think we're coming up on our 5th Easter, going to cateringbyfriesen.com to have them put together our Easter dinner so we can socialize with our family and friends that are over there. We pop in this meal prepared by their Red Seal chefs. It's a special personalized Easter dinner. It's already prepared, so you put it in the oven to warm it up, and that's it. It's fantastic. You start with a delicious main course, and then they offer a variety of different sides to complement your taste buds, delicious desserts to choose from. You can put it all together. Like we said, it's customized, so you're the one making the choices on what's going to go into it. Just visit cateringbyfriesen.com, or, of course, you can visit them in store. If you're looking to get organized this spring, our family's on a huge decluttering mission right now. I'll tell you, there's no better feeling than finally getting your space where you can breathe again. Nobody can do more to help you in this regard than California Closets. They've got a team of unbelievably creative designers and their installers. The professionalism is second to none. It all starts with a free design consultation. You can learn more about their approach, get your project priced out. You can talk about storage rooms, laundry rooms, guest rooms, garages, whatever. That free consultation begins by visiting californiaclosets.ca. And a couple of quick hiring notes here for those of you that are maybe unemployed or underemployed. For starters, Kubi Renewable Energy is getting set for a big spring. They're already Western Canada's busiest solar installer, but things are ramping up with their field offices in Kamloops, Lethbridge, Calgary, and of course they're proudly headquartered out of Edmonton. Energy rates obviously soaring across Canada, so leasing power from local providers is offering just limited control over monthly bills. Albertans are striving to sustain their quality of life, and that means that more Albertans are embracing renewable energy solutions like solar panels. Kubi is revolutionizing Canada's energy sector, and they want you to be a part of it. If you're an installer, if you have your ticket, if you're an apprentice, if you're a talented salesperson, if you're talented and experienced in HR, Kubi wants to talk to you. Check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. If you're going, well, I am looking for work, and I am looking for new opportunity, and I want to work in the energy industry, but I have a different skill set. You've got your P-Eng. Maybe you're a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer or an instrumentation engineer. Am I talking your language? Apex Automation's hiring right now. They are proudly set up in Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and Texas, a new field office in Texas, and they're looking to add to members of their team, building a culture where amazing people like you can do your best work. If you're ready to grow your career, challenge yourself, and learn new skills, specialize in automation, you've come to the right place by visiting the careers link at apexautomation.ca. Before we wrap today, a couple of things we wanted to mention. I really appreciated the Real Talker that passed a note along to us. As you can see, our good friend Brandy Morin, an award-winning journalist. By the way, did you see that the charges were dropped? Brandy Morin, remember she was arrested covering on behalf of Ricochet Media. She was covering the takedown of those encampments in Edmonton, and she talked to us. She did an interview with us a short time ago, the morning after she was arrested and charged by Edmonton police. Those charges were dropped, and so that's obviously great news for Brandy. They should have never been laid in the first place, if you ask me, but I'm not in law enforcement. Brandy sharing this video, you should follow her at Songstress28. Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation Chief Alan Adam handing the CEO of the Alberta Energy Regulator, the disgraced governing body, the AER, Laurie Pusher is his name, came here from Saskatchewan, a statement of claim, letting Mr. Pusher know that the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation is officially suing the Alberta Energy Regulator for Imperial Oil's tailings spills and the impacts on Fort Chipewyan and surrounding communities. This is the first time, says Chief Adam, that the First Nation has had the evidence to take the action to the courts. He says they're tired of the talks. He says they're tired of the promises. We've got an ask in with Chief Adam. Hope to speak with him ASAP. We'll see if the CEO of the Alberta Energy Regulator will speak with us as well. But this is very significant news. I appreciate Brandy reporting it, and I appreciate the Real Talkers that put that on our radar. Before we wrap for the day, we have sad news to share. If you live in and around Edmonton, you may know this already, but a good friend of the show and a good friend to many, many people, the CEO of Euan Youth Services in Edmonton, the host of the Relentless podcast, Kyle Dube, passed away tragically a short time ago. It was an unexpected passing. It was a sudden and unexpected cardiac event. And Kyle leaves this planet, I know, well before most people, well before anybody expected, and well before anybody was ready to say goodbye to this remarkable person. Kyle joined us on Real Talk back on April 6th of 2023, talking about his son, Luke. He talked to us about losing Luke to suicide. And he talked to us about how, as a father, he has navigated the impossibly difficult waters. Their entire family has navigated that grief that no one could possibly understand had they not lived that experience. He talked about his beautiful son, Luke, and how Kyle was honoring him with his work, hosting that Relentless podcast and working in advocacy around mental health and suicide prevention. And he shared with us a very powerful moment, talking about how he came to a realization about what it was, in fact, that had led to his son's passing.
Like I said earlier, this was a brain attack. Luke was overtaken by something. He wasn't selfish. He wasn't weak. And so I've changed. I've changed my outlook on that. I feel embarrassed that I thought that way before, but I think it's a common way for people to think, you know. And my hope is that you can change that thought without having to go through what we've gone through.
That was Kyle Dube joining us right here on Real Talk. I knew that when I mentioned his passing in remembrance that it would bring our live chat together and bring our community together, I could virtually guarantee that there would be somebody that would firsthand speak to the impact that Kyle and that Euan Youth Services had on their family. And here's Sharon simply saying, our family is crushed to hear of the passing of Kyle Dube. He saved my girl's life, plain and simple. Sharon says, please support Euan Youth Services. You can find more about what they're doing online at eucan.ca. You'll be able to watch past episodes of Kyle's Relentless podcast. I'm obviously devastated to lose a friend. Kyle and I had been, and this is sometimes the case, when you lose somebody. Kyle and I had last texted just a few days before his passing, trying to sort out our schedules. He had invited me to join him in studio to record an episode of his show. Obviously, no reason to believe that anything was coming. But in fact, something was, and that's the way life goes. It does not make it an easy pill to swallow. We're devastated for his family that has endured so much grief already, losing Luke. And now Kyle, just an incredible community icon. And I use that word with intention, and I do not invoke that word lightly. We have lost an icon in Kyle Dube. May he rest in power. Real Talk's back tomorrow with another episode that we believe will make you think. We believe will make you wrestle with those thoughts that, well, sometimes we push to the back of our minds because they're inconvenient. We're going to be talking to an author and a researcher, a guy who's taken a look on behalf of the Macdonald-Laurier Institute at Canadians' attitudes on so-called woke culture. His name's Eric Kaufman. I know not everybody's going to love what he has to say, but I hope it brings out the best in all of us every day. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh